All right, here we go. So this is going to be a little video. What is a good source? There'll be some questions in there, and let's just talk about this. Over the course of this term, you're going to do more research. Here, what we're doing is giving you the sources to begin with, but as we go on later, you're going to start finding sources on your own, and you'll be hearing this stuff again and again and again. But this is our first cut, our first sort of attempt to talk about what makes a good source and differentiates from a bad source. Okay. So if you're researching, you want to go find some information about a topic and you need a source, you want to look for some of the elements of a good source. One is that it's written by experts. And another one is that it is, so in other words, it's somebody who knows what they're talking about. They have some kind of credential, experience in the field, an academic background, they've studied it, something like that. You want your information, written by experts, and so you should have their name there and their credentials. So, are they a reporter? Are they an expert in the field from having worked in it? Are they a professor? Something like that. The other thing you want to do is talk about, there should be a little thing in there, peer-reviewed or editor-reviewed. Peer-reviewed is better. So if you have two choices, two sources, one is peer-reviewed and one is editor-reviewed, you want to go with the peer-reviewed. And why? Well, if I am writing, let's say, on how maybe a new invention might help the airplane to fly faster, okay? And I'm writing this thing up. I'm making an argument that this new invention might work to make airplanes fly faster. Who do I want to check my work? I want other experts, peers. I'm an expert in aeronautics, and I want other people who know about how airplanes work. I want them to look at my paper and tell us whether or not it's a good enough paper to go and to be published. That's what a peer-reviewed source is. It's where other experts review and look at what somebody has written and basically just checking to make sure it's okay, that there are no terrible factual errors, that the line of reasoning is fine, and stuff like that. That's what they do. So if you're writing about, let's say, different types of bear species, and I'm an expert in bear species, and I want to write some sort of paper on bear species, I'm going to give that to other people who are also experts in bears. They're professors of bears, and they're going to look at it. That's peer reviewed. That's the best. The second best is editor reviewed. So editor reviewed means that I write it. Let's say I'm writing my thing on bears, and I'm writing my story on bears, and I give it to, and I'm writing for a newspaper. And I'm not really an expert on bears, but I'm just interested, and I write this story as a reporter. And I give it to the editor at the science desk of the newspaper that I work for. The editor at the science desk may not also be an expert in bears. He might be really good in science, knows a little bit about space, knows a little bit about chemistry, knows a little bit about bears and a little bit about dolphins, but doesn't know a whole lot about any one thing. That editor will have a harder time to determine whether or not I've made mistakes. Okay, they can certainly do fact checks on me, but it's harder for an editor who is not an expert in the field to figure out some flaws in reasoning or methods and so on. Okay, peer reviewed is better than editor reviewed. All right. The important thing, though, what makes a good source, is that it's been reviewed by someone. It's not just you giving your opinion. Okay. You want it to be reviewed by someone who can check your facts or just make sure that you haven't gone crazy before this thing gets published. All right. The source is nonprofit. In other words, they don't make money off of this sort of thing. So anytime when you see an EDU website or a Gov website, you know that they're nonprofit. Okay. If you don't know if the publisher is a nonprofit, just go to their About website and it'll tell you if they're nonprofit. Why is nonprofit better? It means that they don't make any money. The money they make just goes to keep the operation going, but they're not trying to make as much money as they can. So nonprofit is good. Now, newspapers are for-profit enterprises, and I'm going to tell you in a minute that newspapers are good sources to use, but they're not perfect sources to use. Newspapers can go wrong, and sometimes newspapers go wrong because newspapers do have a profit motive. They have to make money, and so they have to print things that they think will help them to make. They have to run a business, right? So newspapers, you should definitely use newspapers, but you should also be aware that it's not the perfect source, but it's very, very good. So if you see a .edu or a .gov website, you should be okay on that as well. That .gov means it's the government, and usually their statistics are accurate or close enough to accurate. And .edu is going to be a university, and they're nonprofit. Okay. So let's take a look at examples of good sources. A newspaper is good, but you want to look at the reports and not the op-eds. Okay, the reports are like the news stories, and at the end of the paper, you'll see where it says opinion editorial. That is not really a good source. That's just people giving you their opinions, right? And people who give their opinions are biased. Reports are supposed to be non-biased. Of course, there's always going to be some bias creeping in, but reports are better than op-eds. Reports are not biased. Op-eds are, hey, I'm telling you what my bias is. Here it is. Okay, so you want reports rather than op-eds. Another decent thing is an academic blog, and I'm going to click on that. Here's an example from the University of Chicago, of my old grad school, the law school there. They have a list of blogs. These are their faculty, the teachers there. Some of their teachers blog and so on. If you're going to look at a blog, some of these academic blogs are not bad to look at. You know that they're written by a professor that's an expert in the field. So it's not a bad thing to look at an academic blog. Those aren't so bad. All right. The best thing you can do is look at a published academic paper. And you know, if you go to college, you'll be researching through published academic papers. We might do a little bit of it here, but basically, where do you get a published academic paper? Google Scholar. Whatever you put in here will be a published article. This is the gold standard stuff because these published academic papers are nonprofit, peer-reviewed, written by experts. It's got it all. It's got it all. Okay. So you like those academic papers, but we're going to worry about that more later as to how to find an academic paper. Google Scholar is a great place to go. The only problem is I find that Google Scholar is a little bit dated. You know, they don't have the cutting edge research. One of the problems with trying to find those great sources that are new is that you have to pay for them. You know, they're behind paywalls unless you have a university library account. So that's too bad. But anywho. All right. And then finally, government statistical sources are usually pretty good. So like if you go, you see .gov, census.gov, this is the United States Census Bureau. And oh boy, look at all that, right? You've got annual survey of manufacturers. You've got all this kind of stuff here. These are all statistics. And you can find all kinds of stuff here based on statistics. You can browse by topic, so you can find information about race, business, so on and so forth. So these are, United States Census does a good job with statistics. If you get any stat out of here, you're good to go. Not all governments have good statistics. North Korea says they have 0 cases of coronavirus. And I believe Kazakhstan says so too. So, you know, you have to be careful. Sometimes government statistics aren't what they're all It should be. Okay, elements of a bad source. So let's just take a look at some of these here. For one thing is it's not written by an expert, it's just some random person like me. I'm not an expert. So I'm just a random person, so you don't want to read my blog. The other problem with it being written by a random person is that it's not edited by peers or editors. Okay, so it doesn't go through peer review, it doesn't go through editor review. It's just somebody just types it up and hits send or post or publish or whatever. Right? That's not good because you need somebody to check your facts. You need somebody to check your reasoning and say, hey, you sound kind of crazy. Right? You need that. Believe me. Well, you guys have seen Twitter and other things. A lot of us could use somebody to go in and take a look at saying, that's crazy. Right? All right. If it's in one of these forum type things where you're typing and you're interacting with people, that's no good. If it's somebody who uses informal languages, certainly bad language, but if they're using just sort of common everyday language, that's a bad sign. When you're writing for a newspaper or for an academic journal, you're using a formal style of English. Formal style of English means that you're paying attention, you're caring about things, and that you are sort of in a community of people who are caring about, facts and so on. Anything with a .com website, you should think about as a problem if they made it through Google Sites. I don't know if Blogspot's still around, but maybe there are still things on Blogspot. So anyway, blogs, that's no good. Now, .com, newspapers have .com websites, so that's the exception to the rule. Newspapers have .com websites because they're businesses, they're commercial businesses, hence the com, commercial com. Okay, but other than newspapers, stay away from .coms if you can. One other thing I want to talk about here, which is how to use Wikipedia. I'm sure you've heard many, many times before that Wikipedia is not something you can use and cite in a paper. And it's true, you cannot cite Wikipedia in a paper. It's not really a good source. Why? It is edited, but it's edited by anyone at any time, so there's no real procedure to it. Anybody, you guys know why Wikipedia doesn't work as a source. I find that for students, it's the one thing that I do know that they've heard before. But I use Wikipedia all the time, and it is useful. So if you're researching something, let's say we're talking a lot about the differences between liberals and conservatives, and you want to look at, well, what is liberalism exactly? And you don't really know, and you just want to start somewhere. Wikipedia is a great place to start your search. So I'm going to pull up the page on liberalism here, and then, boy, look at all that. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, so you're not going to cite it, but you're going to kind of poke around and just read and get ideas. Get a little background information and some ideas about things that you might want to look into. And then also because they've got all of these different links, of course, that also makes it good to look at, because you can just kind of pop through different places and so on. So that part is good. And then the other part that's good too is that when you go down here, the references, you like this source looks to me like it's going to be a good source. So you could go here, right? And you can look at different things. Here's a book, right? Books are good. Here's The Economist. That's a magazine that you could use as a source. So, there's a lot of different places you can go to get the proper source, and then just cite that kind of thing. And then at the bottom, well, I mean, look at that. Oh, they have a bibliography. This is a big one. This is what I want to show you. Huge bibliography. A lot of times they're books, sometimes they're articles, but you can go here too for further research. So Wikipedia has its uses, and I have no problem with you looking at it when you're trying to research, but for actually citing, you can't do that. So that was just a little bit of a rundown of good or bad sources. And so now we get to the question. I have two sources here, and I want you to tell me which is better. Let's have a look. Source A. This is your doc that we could be using later. It is a New York Times article. We have the people's names here. Another reason why you want to have names on your source is that you can look the person up and see if they're really an expert, right? So that's good to have the names right up there. All right, so there's that. And the whole article there, which you have access to. Or source B, also about the coronavirus. Oh, look at that, it's Reddit. Ha ha ha. Okay, so as you can see here, let's take a look at Reddit. How deadly is the coronavirus? I want to find out. So I'm gonna. I don't really use Reddit. Oh yeah, for an entire discussion. Okay, so here I am, right on Reddit, and who knows what I might be looking up after this. I mean, some video game information. I don't know. So celebrity gossip, I think you could find on Reddit. So anyway, between Reddit and the New York Times, the last question you're going to ask in the Ed puzzle is, what makes the New York Times better than Reddit as a source? And that's where we'll leave it for now. Thank you.